Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Firstly, just like to go over the disclaimer. So any setups or any TA that I show, it's just my opinion. It's not financial advice or anything as such. So if you take any trades based on this, again, that's at your own risk and it's not something that I would recommend. So if you'd like to pause the video, read the disclaimer, and if you're happy with it, continue. Okay, so let's get to the charts. So first of all, what I'm going to be looking at is Bitcoin, and I'm going to start off with the daily time frame. I have done a few, pre-checks and advances to make the video a bit more, faster in regards to the information presented. So what we're going to be looking at is, first of all, some channels. And then after the channels, we're going to be looking at, various different fib levels and potential targets. And then I'll go through the basic, how the indicators react effectively. So first of all, I have a trend-based fib, which I've drawn originally from this low around here to the high up here and this low. And this is for me to effectively kind of have a potential target of where I could expect BTC to go. And one of the key things, again, I look out for is how the fib reacts. And we can see we had a nice reaction here at the 618 where we broke up. Retested a few times and then obviously broke up to create a new all-time high. So based on this just particular fib, I would still expect the price to ideally push up more. And my ideal targets will be the 1.127 level and the 1618 level. And that's what I would ideally want. But I can't just trade off the fib alone. So I need like a plan, potential, confluences. So I have made, again, a few channels from various time frames, including the daily time frame. So my original channel was this. And from what I can see here, we have broken out of the channel, number one. And we're testing the top of the channel, which is also acting like support. And also the 0.886 level is acting like support. However, we do have other channels in other time frames, and we have to keep them in mind because price can potentially follow them as well on the shorter scale in regards to how it will build up on the higher scale. So the next channel that I have is this one over here, and this is originally based on the 4 hour, no, on the daily, but I would use this on the more of the 4 hour time frame. And again, this channel over here, let's hide the fib and hide the previous channel. It more or less shows like support. And if you look at it from the close point of view, so the 2 points I've selected is these two, with that being the high. And currently we're sitting over here. And yes, you could say I'm being a bit biased. It's showing upwards, but the current price where we're sitting, it's sitting right on the channel. And it's overlaying the bigger channel, which is testing the top. So for me, that's a bit of good confluence if I look at it from a channel perspective. The other possibility I'm looking at is I can see if this channel was to fail, and what I mean by that, we're looking at this channel potentially price breaking down, in which sort of direction it could potentially go to. Okay, so I like to plan for both, and it would be very naive of me just to look at one particular setup. Okay. Now, if I load up a normal fib, which is from this low over here, from the impulse low to the up, so I'm not looking at this wick here, because here we started to range and then we moved up. Again, we can see we're sitting under 236, okay? If we hold this level and we hold the trend-based fib, which is the 886 and the second set of confluence, and that's removed, and the parallel channels, and the fib retracement, then I would be looking at more of potentially maybe a bounce from that, moving up potentially in that channel range. And what I would be targeting ideally, right, would be the trend-based fib, which at this case would be the 1.127. Potentially, if it does touch this particular area, we're looking at a middle of the channel in itself, and that would be creating a new all-time high. Now, if I break this down to say the 4-hour time frame, the other things we need to look at, I would be interested in, is looking at if there's any potential order blocks. So if I was looking for any order blocks in this particular area, I would say they are filled. And again, any order blocks around this area here, I wouldn't class this wick as filling this, red candle or red order block, because I would expect this to be ideally a red candle. So if I expect price to come back down, I'd be looking at potential retest of around this area. Okay, so that's what I would expect if it does drop and if we do lose that level. But at that point in time, if it does lose that level, what you also then need to understand is, yes, it could bounce, but then what it could do potentially, the setup that I have for it to break to go up becomes invalidated. And one of the reasons why it can easily become invalidated, as price comes down, if it feels this, then this particular 886 and also the other fib levels, the 236 and the top of the channel will act effectively as resistance. So in the ideal scenario, you want the bounce over here to occur and price to come, a green candle in that channel. Otherwise, I'm going to expect maybe a more sideways action in this area, with even a potential retest down to the 618 at this point. And that's what I'd look at with a potential wick to the middle of that channel. And that would be following like a continuation pattern, effectively filling that channel in, right? And again, that you'll end up having a good area for potential longing again, because you're at the lower part of the channel and using the 618 as support. But if it breaks through this, again, what I'd be looking at that sort of point is moving further up. And what I would be doing is looking at local fib levels to see where I could target it, to see if we could reach that 1.127. And so what I would want to do in this sort of case is, first of all, I want to look at locally where price is going to go potentially. So I could put, if I ignore this wick, again, I want to do 2 fibs, one ignoring this wick and one with the wick, to have an idea of where things could go. So if I base it on this, pardon me. So if I base it on this, like I say, we've bounced on the 0.5 level, and we almost missed the 618 level. Now that's based on this fib, this low. If I base it on this particular wick, again, this wick may not be present in all charts, but if I do look at it from that point, what I want to see is, did we get close to it? Could we potentially go down? So at this sort of point, we're looking at prices still hovering under the 382 level. So effectively, kind of they're showing as potential local resistance, where I would normally expect price from the low, from that high, maybe retrace like this, could even do this, come back down, test the 618, and then try to break the last high. And if it does do that, and I would expect it to go to again to 236 area, that would be ideal if I'm looking at it from a really low time frame. So I don't really want to give any sort of trades or anything as such, but what I am doing is trying to give a plan on how I would look at the market. So effectively, if I'm going to long this, I ideally want to long this within this sort of channel, the lower part. And if I'm going to short this, I'm going to short this potentially on where it is currently, but as I see a rejection. And at that sort of point, if we start to lose the local 618, I'll be thinking about it. And at that sort of point, I'll be looking at the bigger term, the fib that I've pulled. And again, at that sort of level, I'd want to target the lower areas. Okay. But that's just my opinion. And that is how I'm looking at it from a bigger scale for Bitcoin. Now, moving on from Bitcoin, I will also be looking at a few alts as well. So I'm going to be looking at XRP, and I did go over this in my last video. So again, similar sort of setup we have. I have a channel again. You probably notice I like using channels, and my particular sort of target in the previous video, ideally, first would be around the 5K level, and then obviously the 1.127. And currently what we have, based on this trend-based pull of a fib, we are testing the 618 area or the golden pocket as potential support. And if we do hold this area, the other nice thing you have in Confluence is you have the middle of the channel. And effectively, if that holds, we can see a potential test maybe at the 786 to even the 886 level with a wick all the way up to to the top of the channel. And that will be a lot nice area to potentially take your long trade. And again, one of the things to understand with this is we want to see how Bitcoin reacts. If Bitcoin moves sideways, or the price of Bitcoin pumps as well with the decreasing Bitcoin dominance, this would be a nice move up. However, at the same time, if the Bitcoin dominance effectively starts to move back up, price of BTC drops, and various other aspects happen, then potentially we could come down, and then we would have a different fib to pull. And in this sort of case, you could potentially look at a pull from not this one, that's from the previous chart, from this low, from the high to the low here, again trying to target the 618 to this, so adding confidence to the trend base. But what I was actually saying is, if this is the top, then I would look at something maybe from this week here to that high, and I'll target at least around this 3 at 2 level with a order block, and even the 0.3, 0.5 with the potential order block here on the this red candle here, not this one. That's one way to look at it. The other way would be to move this to the actual impulse would be from here, and again, there's not much of a difference for the 3 at 2 and that first order block. However, the other difference that you do get with this pull is you're effectively targeting this sort of golden pocket as well. And for this, the ideal way is not, again, expecting it to dump straight down. It would be, it moves down, potentially fills this, we come back up around here, the natural sort of pattern that we could potentially ideally get, and then maybe like that, creating a swing failure, and then to break back up again, maybe around here. That would be ideal. But otherwise, the natural target for me is close to 5K for ETH. I will come back to BTC and ETH with the indicators, but I'd like to go through the TA side, the manual side of it first. And the next coin I have is I'm looking at XRP. So in XRP, first we've got the bigger channel, and again we're currently at good support, and for me that's very important. We did have a swing failure pattern over here, and then the other thing I'm also looking at is this was the channel moving down, and what we really want to see is price to break through that channel and using the lower part of the bigger channel as support to break above. So effectively it could be anytime soon it could potentially break. If we look at it from a sort of fib point of view, I will take the high of this to this low, and you can clearly see the very hard resistance, you could say, is this 618 level. And you can see we tested it here, we've tested it multiple times here. So if it does test it potentially maybe the third time, there is a higher possibility, again it's just my opinion, that it could potentially break up. So if it does do that, I will potentially take maybe a better position or a stacked position above this channel further up with a stop on the very low. And again, I'm not sharing that as a setup, it's just my opinion. And the reason I'll take it as a higher probable sort of trade simply because looking at the bigger channel. And the same thing with XRP, we're still looking at BTC and we're still looking at the BTC dominance charts. Okay, moving over to, let's go to BIT. And why am I showing BIT? Because, well, I hold this coin. So again, not trying to pump it or anything, but looking at the current channel, I like what it's doing. We can see we're currently testing the middle of the channel, an area of potential resistance. If we take the fib level from this low to the high, we didn't quite make it to the 382 level, but we are testing the 236. So if this does end up being a local bottom, that would be good. And what I want to do is on the 4-hour chart, I would want to find out if we've reached local resistance. To do that, again, is from that high to the low and just see how it is. And we're currently pretty much sitting near very close to the 382 level. So ideally, if we do break this, and you could say the 382 level is a form of resistance because you've got a confluence from the middle of the channel as well. So if it does break above and for some reason obviously rejects near the 618 or the 786, what I would be looking at, this is if it breaks above, we're talking potentially either here or even up here. If it does go here and rejects, I expect maybe a retest of the 382 as a wick and the candle close above the middle of the channel. And then we move up, potentially could break the 618 again. If it does break through the 618 initially and goes to the 786 sort of level, then an easy test down on the 618 before we start to move back to retest that high again. And if it does break, then I'm going to be looking at higher targets. And for that, what I would again do is use a trend-based fib. And what we've got here would be something along this lines. So take this. So if I measured it from this low to this high, we'll be looking at obviously the potential low targets. So, based on this, we bounced on the 786 with the potential to move up. So if I want to see where we could go, what I'm going to be looking at is this low to that high. And if that is the low, approximately near the 0.133. And if we do break above the 236 or go near it, which is effectively close to the original 618 area, So that would be perfect. And a breakout from here with a potential rejection at 382 is possible. But long term, my target with this point would be closer to more of the 618 of the trend-based fib. That's it for BIT USDT. We'll move on to well, everyone's general favorite at the moment is SHIB. So I'll just do it, you know, as a well, just to show everyone what it's about. Currently, I'm not in any sort of trade in SHIB, simply because you know, I made my money from the low, from around here, and I took my profits. And it's not something I want to be in long term, but I know a lot of people are super bullish on this. So based on, say, a channel for, just say, the daily side of things, it's relatively hard. But if I had to draw a channel, you're potentially looking at something like maybe from around here to here to here. But again, there's not much I have to go on. You know, I'm not going to draw a channel from here. It's just doesn't feel right. And if this is going to retrace, this is where I would expect it to ideally come down to the mid-level. Currently, just looking on the line chart, you can see SHIB is making lower highs and lower lows. So, you know, that's the natural way of things of retracement. Okay, so on the lower time frame, if we make again a channel, you could take this potential high to this low over here, low high, and this point over here, and this will then obviously create a nice descending channel. And if I'm going to trade this, personally, I would not be wanting to long it right now, because I see this move could be the test of the channel and it could reject down. And we have used the middle of the channel as potential support. So, you know, I don't really see any major order blocks in this area. You could potentially, this could be one. But again, this 1 hour chart, if I look at it from a 4 hour point, doesn't really fill my criteria too much. You know, if I use these two both candles combined to use it as an order block, you know, that could be an area we could come up to, but that's me forcing it. In regards to where it could go for a price, if we use, say, the trend-based fib, this low to the very high here. So what we can see from this, let's remove the channels. We rejected after 382, which is not too great, and we're trying to hold 0.133. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is using the normal fib retracement tool. If I use this low to the high, let's hide this. And again, we're under the 382. If I was going to trade this and I wanted to long, my sort of ideal areas to long would be around the 618 to 786 area, around here. But again, I'm not going to be, this is not a trade setup, you know, it's just my opinion. That's what I think it could do. And if we add the channels back to it, you know, you get a nice sort of line up potentially. So if it does come down around here, that's the middle of the channel. But the key resistance is the top descending part of the channel. There will be many people looking at this as a triangular shape as such, but I don't trade triangle bands or any bands as such. But overall, if it does, you know, break down, there is that possibility, you know, we could move up on the bigger scale of things, and that's a big could. Anyway, that's it for SHIB. Moving over to Link. So looking at link, so this is the bigger time frame channel that I've made on the daily. So it looks good. We've seen a rejection of the 3-year-2. What I have is a trend-based fib from the very low to the high to the low, and this is off the channel in itself, and we currently rejected this 0.5 level, but we are holding the 3-year-2. If we hold the 3-year-2 and we continue to move, and if we do move up, I can see maybe a potential rejection closer to the 618. If we do again break through, then my targets are going to be around the 886 to the 786 level. And again, I would use other fib confluences, so such as the taking a pull of this fib retracement from the high to the low. But again, you'd want it to break this 618 again, because it's still acting as resistance. So if it does break this and we do move up, you know, my target at that point would be a nice, you get some nice confluence with 0.133 with the 786 or 1.127 with the 886, and again to the top of that channel, and that would obviously create a nice high, and that would be, well, very bullish at that point. But again, it's a lot easier for this to come back and retest the local 3-year-2. And that would be the bottom of the channel, because you've got confluence over here too. And that's it really. There is another fib that I drew locally for it, which, let's load that up, which is from this low to this high. And this is, if that is the potential high, then we're just sitting above the local 3-year-2. Yeah, that's it for link. So moving on from link, let's go to maybe SXP. So SXP looks decent at the moment, especially on the daily. We're at the bottom of the channel. The local downtrend, we've effectively broken above it, and we've already had an 8.45% move today, which is very good. And this is the potential channel I'm looking at. So based on this, I'm expecting maybe a potential move to the upside. But before I will calculate that, what I really want to look at is obviously the fib level. And here you can see we smashed through the local 618, tested the 786. And if we do carry on moving up, then what I want to do is look at the more bigger scale of things. And what I'd be looking at is I'll choose this high initially to that low, simply because that was that impulse big move down. So we broke up above the 236, and it would be nice to see a break of the 3-year-2 level. And if it does continue, even a sideways, and if this channel is correct, it would be nice to target at least the 618. So I'm looking at that for SXP locally. If we do measure this from the very weak high up here, then we are exactly sitting at the local 236. And again, the reason I would like to measure both, because it helps me to gauge through different ideas and ranges. The other thing I would look at is, have we just potentially just filled a block in a different lower time frame, or do we have potential blocks sitting at the higher time frame? So for example, here are we looking at a 3-year-2 level, or are we looking at a potential breaker block around the 618 sort of area? So these are the two things I would look at. And if that is a breaker block, then obviously I would expect price to come up to here and reject, right? And if it does reject, then obviously on the bigger scale, we then obviously make another lower high, right? But irrespective of that, if you're trading, whether you're trading spot or leverage, it's potential for making good profits. But again, just an idea and just an opinion. Okay, next I'll move over to Tezos. So again, a bigger channel. We're at the bottom of the channel, we're holding it. We have already picked up some liquidity in the lower block, and this is a 4-hour block. So if we move down here, So I would potentially, you could say this is a block even here, and we have filled that liquidity. There are more local 4-hour blocks. So if I expect the price to move up, we want to recapture the low, the channel within the bigger channel, and then potentially fill these blocks, ideally either breaking through them or retesting down, such a, we could test like this. Again, this is just my opinion, or potentially looking at it from a bigger fib level point of view like this. Let's hide some of the horizontals. So, 618 showing resistance over middle of the channel, but I wouldn't count on that here because I wouldn't expect the prices to go straight up. Could be wrong, but in the long-term scale of things, if price does move up and it does break above this 3-year 2 area, what we're looking at is potentially maybe the 786. And if you then add the various order blocks, you can see there's a lot of confluence we have on the various different levels, the fib levels. So first, you've got a 4-hour block level at the 3-year 2. If we fill that and we don't break through it, then obviously I expect a retrace down. If we do even come down and push back up, the bigger block and the bigger target will be this local 618. I haven't checked out all the blocks in this particular area yet, but that's what I would be looking at for Tezos. And that's basically it in regards to the coins. What I'll do is do a quick sweep of my indicators to see how are they looking, and do we have that confluence. So if we look at, say, the main the Titan setup, which is using the Titan stochastics and the Titan RG, so ideally, yes, we've got a little push up, but we are seeing a drop in sell volume and bullish volume. If the bullish volume does not break that sell volume, then I don't see us moving up currently. If it continues that the bearish volume is higher than the bullish volume, then we could see potentially price to come down and maybe test that 618. But in the ideal scenario, we want it to flick up, and it would look like something. Let me show you. Not that. Well, in the ideal scenario, let's show you the back on the daily. Actually, what we want is something like this, where the RG crosses, and now we get a decline of the sell volume, and we have a stability of the buying volume, so effectively accumulation. And then soon as the buying volume crosses that threshold, you can see as long as there's more buys, we continue to move up. And yes, you do get sells coming in, but the buys are a lot higher, and then effectively we do start to get a push down. So that's how I would look at this. So I would say in that case, that's the sort of ideal scenario you want for the move up. But again, on the move down, you can see here the RG's turned red, but there's a sharp increase in sells, and yes, there's an increase in buys, but the increase in sales was so much significant that it created this big massive candle down, and we slowly still move down. We got a little push up, but again, not enough, and we continue to move down. There's certain things I'm looking at in terms of BTC. If we then look at for ETH, again, the nice thing about ETH is we currently still have more buyers than sellers, so which is still a nice thing, but it's not enough at the moment. We do need a bigger push for that to come in. And again, if we look at the lower scale time scales, you can see it doesn't look that amazing. Yes, we had a little freak 4-hour green candles, but not enough buy volume, and that's just simply more, it's just shorts closing. That's how I've perceived that. Lower time frame than this, you know, this says, yes, we've crossed over, but the volume is still decreasing for buyers, you know. I don't have that hope in that lower time scale. And if you actually look at it from this point of view, do this fib pull, you can easily see a little push up maybe to the 618 and then reject, creating a local lower high. So it's something to look out for. Moving on to XRP, if I look at the daily, you know, that looks very nice. You know, we flicked over back onto the green. This current stock is moving up. So, you know, could potentially retest this area here. If I look at maybe the weekly, doesn't look as favorable. So again, it depends how you're holding this, whether you're holding this for short term or not. 4 hour doesn't look too great, but it can easily snap up. Let's look at it on the 1 hour. So yeah, so the 1 hour is about to cross up, which is nice. So again, potentially has the ability to move up, maybe even test this local high. You got a nice 786 on the top of the channel. Really want to break that. Going down to, say, BITDAO, volume coming down for sales, buyers crossed on the hour, which is nice, but not as nice as I hoped for, to be honest, because you really want to see a break like this. On the 4 hour, yeah, looking a bit, well, poo. And then the daily, not enough data on the daily. On the 8 hour, 12 hour, still looking good, but again, you know, it has the possibility to come down. Yeah, so as you can tell with the buys and the sells in terms of volume, it's effectively very much linked with how BTC is behaving as well. Again, here you can see there's more sell volume than buy. So ideally, we need this to be broken up on the 4 hour for this to be achieved. So we'll know today, as we've got a nice big day, you know, monthly close. For SHIB, not looking too hot on the 4 hour. You know, yes, there's more buys, and sells, but it's declining. So same thing with the big long term. So that's why I wouldn't really want to be in SHIB anyway. Again, looking at the hourly, potentially moving down. So I wouldn't want to be in it at the moment. Link, looking good on the 1 hour. More buys than sells, but we do need an increase. If the 1 hour helps push across this up, we can see a nice surge on Link. And it's still not too bad, hasn't crossed. Okay, last two, SXP, and then we look at Tezos, and we are done. So SXP looks good on the daily. You know, it crossed over around here to the bearish side and then broke up literally here. So that looks very good on the daily. The 12 hour looks very nice. The 4 hour looks wonderful, you know. We had a good buy volume around here and went sideways, but it continued up after even the little touch. 1 hour, still not too bad. So SXP looks very good. Tezos, on the daily, you can see we are fighting. So if we do get an influx of buyers in, that could potentially be a nice push up, but it all depends on what the close holds for us and what potentially tomorrow holds. 12 hours, not as great. Again, I'm doing quick checks. So potentially could come down still, even with the stock moving up and then resetting. What I normally expect when that happens, and this is with any asset, is effectively this could move up, price just goes sideways, and then this will come up to here, go like that, come back down, and then you'll get a potential bigger move down. And if that occurs, then you're looking, then I'll be looking at this area, because we ideally want to recapture that. And that's it for myself. Thank you again for tuning in. Sorry if it was long. I hope I was very thorough. So again, everything that I've shown is just my opinion. None of it is actual trade setups or any signals or any or financial advice. And I'll try to do more videos very soon on a regular basis. Thank you again, everyone. All right. Everyone can unmute themselves if they want to ask me anything.